Okay, Monday, January 4th, 2021 now. We finally made it. Today we're going to review fraction math, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions. We're also going to review decimal math, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing decimals. And so you have a sheet, a review sheet, and we're going to look at that in just a minute. It looks just like this, so make sure you have that out. But I want to talk about what's tomorrow, okay? First of all, we do have a worksheet that we're going to work on in class today. And then for homework, you have a study guide, just like we usually do at the end of chapters. But this chapter test, we're going to take in two parts. We're going to take part one tomorrow, and then next week, we're going to take part two, okay? And this part is going to be without a calculator. And part two, we're going to get to use a calculator on. So you have a study guide like you normally do, and you have a study guide key. In class, you have a worksheet today about fractions, not decimals, and a Google form to fill out about that. But let's review everything that's going to be on that test regarding fractions and decimals that you do have to do without a calculator, okay? Can somebody tell me how you have to add and subtract fractions or mixed numbers? Grayson. Exactly, and you have to change those fractions so that they have common denominators, right? You have to change them to equivalent fractions that have common denominators. So here, our two fractions have denominators of 8 and 4. What do you guys think is the least common denominator? Can you all shout it out? 8, right? So we don't even have to change the first one. Now, what did I tell you guys is a good way to subtract mixed numbers on your paper? Y'all remember? Put them in vertical form. Who said that? Put them in vertical form. Good, Palmer. So we're going to write that as 2 and 3/8 on top because we're not changing that fraction, okay? That one's going to stay 2 and 3/8. Minus 1 instead of 3/4, we're going to change that to something over 8. So we have to think about what I have to multiply 4 by to get 8. What do I have to multiply 4 by to get 8? 2. So that means I have to multiply that numerator times 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. Okay? So look very carefully at what we have now. If we have to subtract the top fraction minus the bottom fraction, that's what we do in vertical form. What's the matter? What's the matter, Joshua? That's right. So we have to do what, guys? We have to borrow. And when you borrow from a fraction whole number, this becomes 1, and you add the other whole number 1 to the 3/8. And we make 1 and 3/8 into improper by eagle beaking that. Remember that? 1 times 8 is 8, plus 3 is 11 over 8. So now our new fraction in the top is 11 over 8. Does everybody understand borrowing? You put that other whole number with your fraction, then change that mix to improper. Now you can subtract 11/8 minus 6/8 is 5/8. And now for our whole numbers, we have 1 minus 1, which is what? 0. So we don't even have to put that. So our answer is 5 over 8. Okay? So you probably will have to borrow, tomorrow on your test, okay? On some of your problems, not all of them. What about adding and subtracting decimals? Can someone tell me what you have to do, Lissa? You have to line them up. So we also have to put that in vertical form, don't we, guys? To add those without a calculator. So we're going to line those up vertically, and we're going to put the decimals in a line vertically, okay? If one of our numbers does not have the same number of decimal places as the other, what do we have to do, guys? We have to add some zeros, don't we? Okay, so we're going to put a 0 here and a 0 there. You're going to need to put your shield up or wear your mask, but if you have your shield, you need to put your shield up, okay? I'm not going to probably give you COVID, but I have been kind of sick this past couple days, so I don't want y'all to get whatever I have. Okay, so let's put the decimal down here, and let's add. And that gives us, get 11 here, we borrow, and we get 19.4. 159. Okay? All right, now let's go to multiplying. Let's talk about multiplying fractions. Anybody remember anything about multiplying fractions you want to tell me about? Wake up this morning. We need to sing a song or something. Joshua. Okay, you cannot multiply with mixed numbers, right? That's really, really important. Good, I'm glad you remembered that. You have to change any mixed numbers to improper. So we do have a mixed number, so let's change that by eagle beaking that. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 would make that be 16 over 5 times 3 over 8, okay? Anybody remember anything else about multiplying fractions? She's thinking about that. I love how you're thinking. Do you need common denominators? No. And that's what makes it easier to me. Multiplying fractions to me is easier than adding them because you don't need common denominators. You just multiply the top times the top and bottom times the bottom. But I did teach you something else about reducing. Yes. Okay, we can do something that I call cross-reducing before we multiply the numerators and the denominators. And we look and we see diagonally 16 and 8, they're both divisible by 8. So 16 divided by 8 is 2, and 8 divided by 8 is 1. Now, you don't have to cross-reduce to get the right answer. But it makes your math easier, and then if you don't cross-reduce, then you're going to have to reduce at the end, and it's going to be bigger numbers you have to work with. So it does make it easier if you know how to cross-reduce. So on the top, 2 times 3 is what, guys? 6, and 5 times 1 is 5. Okay. Now, you can leave that as the improper fraction 6 over 5 for me on the test tomorrow. Or you could change it to a mixed number, 1 1/5. Remember how you do that? And I like for you to know how to do that without showing the division step, but you think 5 goes into 6 one time with 1 left over, okay? If you did do your division step, it would look like this, okay? And you get 1 1/5, okay? But you can leave it improper for me on the test tomorrow. All right, what about multiplying decimals? Anybody remember something about multiplying decimals? Yes. You don't have to line the decimals up, that's right. Do y'all remember what I did when I multiplied decimals when I was doing my math? I just took out those decimals altogether while I did the math, okay? So I did 62 times 58, okay? So do it with me. We're just going to multiply regularly. We're not going to worry about the decimals while we multiply, okay? So 8 times 2 is 16. 48 plus 1. I'm making sure I'm doing the right problem. Yeah, okay. And then we put a 0. 5 times 2 is 10. Add a 1, 30, 31. And so I get 3, 5, 9, 6, okay? And the reason I'm not saying 3,000 is because I'm not finished with that yet. What do I have to do now for my final answer? How many decimal places she said, add all the decimal places. So Gavin, how many decimal places does my answer need to have? 3, because there's 1 in this number and 2 in this number, okay? All right, so you have to remember all those little details when you don't use a calculator, okay? Now, dividing fractions. Who remembers something about dividing fractions? Nobody remembers anything? Not a single thing? You remember nothing? What do you think we should do first? Change them to improper. Y'all do remember something, okay? Just like with multiplying, we can't divide with mixed numbers. So let's do that. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 1 would be 17 over 2 divided by 1 times 5 plus 2 would be 7 over 5. Now, is anything coming to you yet? Now we remember. Gavin, what do we do? Keep, change, flip. Okay? Keep, change, flip. Don't forget keep, change, flip. That means we keep the first fraction the same, we change to multiplying, and we flip the second fraction. Now, I'm sort of glad y'all didn't remember keep, change, flip right away, because some students like to do these two steps together. They like to change them to improper and keep, change, flip. And you know what happens sometimes when you do that? You forget to flip. You just change it to multiplication, and you get caught up in changing it to improper that you forget to change that second fraction after the division sign to its reciprocal. So I do like to do that in two separate steps to avoid that, okay? So now we can multiply straight across the top, okay? But if we can cross reduce, we look to see if we can do that. And here we have 17 and 7. There's nothing that they are both divisible by. 2 and 5, nothing divisible by, but those don't have a common factor either. So we're just going to multiply straight across the top, okay? So if you don't know what 17 times 5 is without a calculator, you're going to have to do that over here, okay? And that gives you 85 over 2 times 7 is 14. And you can just leave that improper, okay? It doesn't reduce. And I know it doesn't reduce because I couldn't cross reduce there on those two, okay? But always, always make sure that your answer is in lowest form, okay? And then last, dividing decimals. Do y'all remember anything about dividing decimals? Well, first of all, you have to divide yourself, so you need the house, don't you? You remember that? If you're going to do the division yourself, you're going to need the house. Which one of those numbers goes in the house? The first one, right? If it's a fraction, the top one goes in the house. If it's written with the division symbol, the first one goes in the house. And then 0.45 goes outside. Now, we do not take away the decimals to do this math, okay? But we do have to sort of take them away. Joshua, what do we do? Okay. Why twice? Exactly. This is called the dividend, 0.45. And if the dividend, sorry, that's the divisor, sorry. This is the dividend that's on the inside, divisor's on the outside. If the divisor has decimal places, you have to move it to the end, basically taking it away. But you have to do the same thing in the number in the inside of the house, which is called the dividend. So we think of 45 into 63 first. How many times does 45 go into 63? Once, right? 45 goes into 63 one time. We borrow here, and 13 minus 5 is 8, and 5 minus 4 is 1 after we did that, and we bring down our 0. Now we have to think of 45 into 180. We have to try things, don't we, guys? We have to try things. What do you want to try? Come on, let's try something. How many times do you think 45 goes into 180? Yes, ma'am. She says 4. Let's check that. Because you have to do it without a calculator, and that's right. So 4 times, and so you get 14, and the decimal's at the end of 14, so that's just equal to 14. You could think of it as 14.0, but that's not necessary, okay? Now, you have to show all of that work. If you're doing that on your test tomorrow, you, of course, would want to show that, okay? So that is our review about fractions. And then I'm going to get a helper I need 2 helpers because I have 2 other things I want to give you. I want to give you the worksheet that you're going to do in class today and the study guide part 1 that you're going to do for homework. Nobody wants to help me. Okay, Ella, you come get the study guide. Grayson, you can pass out. Do this. This thing says fraction test, but it's not a test. Do that worksheet first before you do the study guide, okay? I want you to do the worksheet first. You do have a Google form for that worksheet, okay? Some of that worksheet is talking about equivalent fractions. It's just reviewing you about a lot of different things about fractions. So you do have a Google form for that. But for the study guide, what do I usually do for a study guide, guys? Do I have a Google form? I have a key. And you see here on Google Classroom, there is a key for the study guide, okay? So after you do the study guide, you need to check yours with the key, okay? It's not as long a study guide as you would normally see because we're breaking this Chapter 6 test up into 2 parts, okay? So you're going to work on the worksheet. You're going to fill out the Google form for your fractions, no calculator, and then you're going to do the Chapter 6 Part 1 study guide and check it with your key. And tomorrow is a test, first test of 2021, okay? So make sure that you do check your study guide.